Jumpin In on Manx Radio.
With Howard and Chris Kane.
Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome. And here we are yet again on a Friday night. It's all the best in modern and contemporary jazz as we spring into spring with myself, H, on Jumpin In.
And me, Chris. Yes, welcome along to this week's show. And with all the road works going on around, I'm sure by coincidence, a certain 37 3/4 miles worth of island roads, you can almost smell the Castellar as we are definitely into spring. And whilst it may be nippy, you have to love the sunshine and those deep pink evening skies, not to mention the riot of yellow in the hedgerows. So, H, what has got your pulse racing this week, and what has left you cold other than the beer in your glass and the draft on your sprafts in the garden?
If only I haven't done a barbecue yet. The wonderful Emma Rawicz, we've seen her a couple of times, a rising star, risen already perhaps on the British jazz scene. Brilliant new album out with Gwilym Simcock on act. We'll be checking out a little bit of that. Blast from the past with a real classic, Tales of Another, the late Gary Peacock, beginning of the Standards Trio. And, well, perhaps a bit of George Russell.
And from me, we're fair, we get what we're looking for, we have the strength of character. And to get underway, we may be calling the Coast Guard out, as here's saxophonist Tom Smith with his big band and Speedboat in Trouble. Terrific stuff indeed. Tom Smith and his big band with Speedboat in Trouble, taken from his recently released album, A Year in the Life. Tom is a graduate of the Royal Academy. He has twice been a finalist in the BBC Young Jazz Musician of the Year competition. He's got 4 different bands of varying sizes of his own, and he also played with Nijo, the Patchwork Orchestra, Gareth Lochrane's big band, and also was the only UK musician to play with the International Generations Festival Band in Switzerland under Maria Schneider, who he cites as one of his influences. He's been making a big noise on the London circuit, and as you heard, writing exhilarating music, and the whole album is worth a listen. A Year in the Life celebrates, he says, the joy of making music in London, with each track telling a distinct story. And for this project, I was able to bring together some of my favourite people. The band sounds like London. Music everywhere, something new around every street corner. Tom also plays great lead alto, as we heard on that track, and there's many seasoned players in the band, including Paul Booth and Alex Garnett on tenor, Liam Donacci on Hammond, and Connor Chaplin on the bass, plus many, many other young musicians. Releasing a second album of 9 original compositions and moving from a small quartet to a big band, A Day in the Life is a brave statement, but one original new voice, and I think it's a gamble, which has really paid off.
Jumping back a few years now to Gary Peacock's album Tales of Another. I'm talking to our Luxembourg correspondent recently, remembering how he listened to this album on cassette many, many years ago when he was staying with me in London, and didn't realise it was only on about the 5th repetition. He said, I realised it was an auto-reverse cassette deck. Thought it was a long album. It's a cracking album, and basically it is the Standards Trio before it was the Standards Trio, with Jack DeJohnette on drums, Gary Peacock bass, Keith Jarrett at the piano, of course, but this very first iteration of them playing and being released on ECM in 1977 was under the name of Gary Peacock. None the worse for that. It's got that lovely spacious open feel of sort of mid-70s, 80s ECM. This is Major Major. Marvellous. Still, as we say, sounds fresh as paint, and it is always intrigues me how some music dates and other doesn't. So sometimes you listen to music from the 70s, 60s, 80s, particularly in the jazz genre, as we're talking here, and you can almost instantly identify it after a few bars of thinking, yeah, that's 70s jazz, that's 60s jazz. That, to my mind, has quite a timeless feel. You probably would, if you're an ECM fan, as I think we both are, identify it as sort of 70s, 80s ECM, because it has that, as I said, that sort of slightly more spacious, open sort of chamber feel than perhaps some of the more modern releases. The music itself, however, I think has a wonderfully timeless feel about it. Gary Peacock's album Tales of Another, that track called Major Major Gary on bass, a very brooding picture of him sporting a fine tash and a bit of a bouffant hairdo on the inside of the CD cover as well. Keith Jarrett on the piano, sadly again. Gary's no longer with us. Keith is with us. I saw an interview with him quite recently. He had a stroke, of course, I think in 2018, and hasn't played. Well, I don't think he will be playing again, sadly. Happily, huge amount of recorded music, of course. Jack DeJohnette, the one of the trio who is still active, I think in his 80s now, but still playing, Jack. Long may he continue to do so. And yeah, if you've not heard that album before, you'll find it on Apple Music and whatever. You can find albums still available on various sites or in your local record shop if you're lucky to have a browse. Tales of Another, recommended to you.
If you're lucky enough to find a record shop, but if the albums cost less than 30 quid each. Next up from me, talking about the ECM fanboys, well, drummer and composer Billy Hart on the ECM label. Although it was recorded 3 years ago, Just has only just been released, and from it, here's the title track. Can you guess? Just. Just, the title track of the wonderful new release from drummer Billy Hart, with his long-running quartet of Mark Turner, pianist Ethan Iverson, then double bassist Ben Street. A great album this, with a band who are almost telepathic, and they bring their best game to this recording. I know we talked about ECM just a minute ago, and we often regard their purple patch as being in the mid-70s, but I have to say, I think the 20s has been a good second wind from ECM.
Absolutely so, yeah. I really enjoyed that album muchly. I think in that track called Southampton I've played several times in the car recently, and really enjoyed that. Billy Hart, again, must be, I don't know, certainly way into his 70s.
Late
if not
70s.
Yeah, 78, 79, and still playing brilliantly. Classic stuff. It is Jumpin' In with Chris and H. A new one now from Emma Rawicz and Gwilym Sincock. It's on Act. It's called Big Visit, and this track is The Drumble Drone. The Drumble Drone from Emma Rawicz and Gwilym Simcock's new album on the Act label. It's out in about a week's time, I think, March, or in fact more or less now, actually, couldn't think of it, 28th. It's out today, so this very day, there you go. So get down to your local record shop, if you can find one. Try and buy a proper record or CD if you can. Just my opinion. Anyway, it is out today on Act. The album Big Visit, that's called The Drumble Drone. And the pair of, we've seen them actually before down at the Pizza Express, very fine. They've played together and worked together for some time. Gwilym, of course, been on Act. His album Good Days at Schloss Elmau, nominated for the Mercury Prize. Emma, just all over the place at the moment, is one of those big names, been massive on the British and indeed European scene, whether playing solo, whether playing with others, leading her own big band. And the pair of them share a lot of sort of, she's always enjoyed his music and sort of been a fan of Gwilym's for a long time, and she says we've got lots of similar reference points in our musical makeup. So again, getting back to ECM, they both like the likes of Keith Jarrett, Jan Garbarek, Ralph Towner, and also, she says, the whole folk-inflected lineage of British jazz through the likes of John Taylor, Kenny Wheeler, and Norma Winston, and all that had a great impact on us and brings, I think, some commonality together. Really enjoyed the album. Like I said, the duo setting, very unusual. Sometimes they can be a bit stark, a little bit sort of too barren, a little bit clinical, but not that one. I think this works very well indeed without a rhythm section per se, and it's certainly all the tracks I've heard so far I've really enjoyed. It's been lively, been a lot of interplay. You can tell the pair of them are having fun, and the mutual respect they have for each other's playing, I think, shines through as well. Big Visit, out on Act. Check it out.
Yeah, and when we last saw them, in fact, at the Pizza Express, it was before this was just about coming around. Siggy Locke had been to see them and had said, I think this would be great to put out as a duo. And the last time we saw Emma, she was actually playing in a big band with Nikki Isles. Fantastic. And I was hoping we might get Nikki on the show, but hoping that she gets some recordings of her own London-based big band out as well, because of fantastic noise they made. Although they virtually, along with the students from the Royal Academy, filled the entire club. There was room for a few of us to squeeze in at the back. Well, now going back a little bit, a sax man, Phil Bancroft, has featured on the show numerous times, both with his big brother Tom in their groundbreaking trio AAB, and of course as co-owners of the late and lamented Caber Records, championing jazz in Scotland. Well, here he is with a new trio entitled Beautiful Storm and their debut release, When All Seems Lost. Here's Finding Hope Part 2. And that's the way it ends. Finding Hope Part 2 from Phil Bancroft's Beautiful Storm, as he's calling this trio, with Graham Stephen on guitar and the Delhi-based percussionist Gayan Singh on tabla. I don't know what you think, but for me, they certain echoes of a trio AAB, and a new trio AAB would be no bad thing at all. That album came out just before Christmas, and if you're wondering where Brother Tom was, well, he's had a new release out too, which we did feature a few weeks ago on the show, Morse Code Through the Lights, with his new project, which is called Playtime, which has got a great mixed lineup of people, including Laura Yerd, Byron Wallen, Ernest Reisinger, Dennis Baptiste, Sakoto Fuji, Nasuke Tamura, Ian Bellamy, and Corey Nwamba, as well as Tom. Great lineup there. Really interesting album as well. Two brothers. Really, they should bring back Trio AAB as well, perhaps.
Yeah, amen to that. I used to really enjoy Trio AAB. So go back and listen to some more of their music. Jumping in, Chris and myself, H, and we were talking the other week, in fact, when we were clearing out the old Music Man Towers, and I think you found a poster from the Bracknell days, I think it was, and it was mid-80s, and he said, look at that, and the lineup included this man, George Russell. I'd rather forgotten we actually saw him perform there. And again, that sort of sent me thinking, gosh, you know, he did such great music for so long, and really experimental, really challenging at times, and then could be quite funky, could be quite rocky in later years, and I started listening to some George Russell again, including this one, which he might well have been playing at the time we saw him. I can't remember the exact set he played, but this was the African Game, which he released on Blue Note in the 1980s. Again, a really intense listen in places, not calm music, as we would say, but a really good one to put on and listen to with a nice glass of something of an evening, and I've been enjoying this one at home. This is, it's all called Event 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is Event 7, Cartesian Man.
Hi, this is Craig Taborn, and you're listening to Jumpin' In with H and Chris on Max Radio.
Little sample there of Michael Volney's latest, also on Act actually, Living Ghosts. Michael on piano, Tim Lefebvre on double bass, Eric Schaefer at the drums. Used to like M as well, I must admit. Lovely guy. We still haven't interviewed him. Let's try and get on to Act and see if we can have a chat with Michael at some stage. And Jazzwise said, Michael Volney Trio as a reminder, we're in the 21st century, not the 1960s. Amen to that. Before that, George Russell, The African Game. That still sounds like a really good listen, way back from the 1980s. And yes, memories of seeing him at Bracknell back in the day.
Bracknell, what a great festival that was. They are trying to put some jazz on again, not a full-blown festival yet. And Brecon also seems to come back. Perhaps we should have another adventure into mid-Wales. Well, that's about all we got time for this week's show, but we can just about fit in a track from Fasten Up, the latest release from Fusion veterans. Well, I say fusion veterans, the Yellowjackets. Their albums often are straight ahead jazz, a mix of straight ahead and third stream and fusion. But this is their 27th release in a career spanning some 44 years, so they're obviously doing something right. Here's Willpower with Bob Mintzer on tenor sax, and on his first track, Iwi, Russell Ferranti on piano and keyboards, Dane Anderson on electric bass and MIDI sequencing, and Will Kennedy at the drums. See you in a couple of weeks, if you have the willpower.
Yeah, look after yourselves.
Bye for now.
Bye.